remind everybody, our presentations are for May. May 6th will be Orthodoxy 101, and it's going to be Jesus as the new Adam. And we're going to talk about the incarnation of Jesus Christ, the Annunciation, when the Archangel Gabriel came, why God had to become a man, and the theological implications on him as God and as us as creation. So that's May 6th, okay? That's only next Wednesday, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was going to have it on May 20th, the next Bible study, but because May 20th is the eve of and of Ascension. This year, the 21st, is both St. Constantine Helen and the Ascension. Yeah. So we're going to make it the 26th. So, 27th. So Wednesday, May 27th, will be Bible study. And I think the way I wrote it was the baptism of Jesus Christ, the introduction of St. John the Baptist, and the baptism of Jesus Christ. Those are the themes that we're going to talk about in Matthew chapter 3. So that's the Bible study on May 27th. So May 6th, Orthodoxy 101, Jesus Christ, the new Adam, and May 27th, Bible study on St. John the Baptist and the baptism of Jesus Christ, which we all know better as Epiphany.
Yeah.
All right, they'll find the answer. Okay, question before we begin.
I asked this question once before during one of the meetings.
Okay.
And I missed the part of the meeting, so I don't know if you answered it. God sent an angel down and told Joseph and Mary to go to Egypt.
Well,
Or
he
something like that.
warned Joseph in a dream.
Okay. And because, what's his name?
Herod, Herod had 3 sons.
But
Yeah, go ahead.
God saved his Jesus,
But the
but
other
the
2,000?
other babies were killed, murdered, or what?
Well, you
Why?
asked him this entire Bible study, or a good part of it, we'll talk about it. It's actually in this text, Matthew chapter 2. So you asked the question, and it will be answered within the context of this Bible study today. Great question. So that I don't jump the gun and begin answering your question, within the context of this study that we're going to do now, Matthew chapter 2, we're going to discuss it because it actually has the event of what took place and then the Old Testament passage that is used by Matthew to describe, the mother's lament of her children dying, or those 2,000 children. Right. So that's good. All right, so let's begin. Since we are in the Feast of the Resurrection, let's begin by singing the Apolitikion of the Feast of Feasts, which is Pascha. All right. Christos anesti ek nekron, thanato baptisas, ketis entis mimasi, zoin carisamenos. Χριστός, Αναστάσω Ιησούς από το τάφο καθώς προείπεν, έδωκε ημίν την αιώνια ζωή και το μέγα έλεος.
Amen.
Okay, pass these on for those who may have just walked in, so that they have the Bible study, or okay, so here we are at the 2nd chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, and quickly, Matthew is the first Gospel in the New Testament, and the first book of the New Testament. Matthew's always been understood as the catechetic Gospel. In other words, it's the Gospel that's best used to teach someone about the faith. It makes sense. It's got good structure. It covers a lot. It's actually the longest Gospel of the 4. And Also, Matthew is one of the three synoptic gospels with Mark and Luke. Those are the three gospels that are very similar. The Gospel of John, which will be the next series of Bible studies, which we'll do, is much different, considerably different than Matthew. And Matthew is writing to a very Jewish audience. In other words, the people in his community are not necessarily Gentiles. They're not pagans who are embracing Christianity, but these are people who've grown up in the Jewish faith and are accepting now Jesus Christ as the Messiah, as the one that was chosen by God, or the one that was brought by God, I should say, to save all of humanity. God's Son, incarnate. Okay, so we talked in the beginning, or I should say last week, about genealogies, and then the importance of it and how unique Matthew's genealogy is, and including women and harlots, talking about how God is not the God of the perfect, but the God of the imperfect. That because of our fallen world, even the lineage that goes from Abraham or David to Jesus is a lineage that's filled with people who might not have been the atypical genealogy, the man, faithful man, who's a patriarch in his own right, but includes women and sinful people on top of it, to show that God works even through sinful people. If you think about Judas, did not God work through Judas? Judas was the agent that brought about the death of Christ, which without whose death there would be no resurrection. There would be no destruction of Hades. One of the things we'll constantly talk about is it's okay to go through bad times. Don't worry so much about them. Just go through them with faith and trust God through the process. And He'll get you through it. And when you get to the other side, there'll be a wealth of knowledge and experience, and you'll come out as a changed person. Right? So, we get now, first we talk about the Annunciation here a little bit, about the Virgin giving birth to Christ. We don't have the length of the Annunciation like we have in Luke in terms of the background information and the actual dialogue that takes place. And but we do have here the introduction of the Gentiles. Now remember, Luke talks about Jesus appearing to the shepherds. Matthew has them appearing, or the shepherds appearing to Christ. Matthew has the Magi, the three wise men, which is kind of odd because it's the opposite. Luke, who's writing to pagans, should have the pagans coming to Jesus, but instead he's got the poor shepherds. Matthew, writing to Jews, has the Gentiles, these three wise men, astrologists, coming to Jesus. Again, everything is kind of upside down. I love the way our faith works, but there's a purpose behind everything. So let's begin with Gentiles worship the Christ child, and then let's go all the way to, someone read the first two verses, and then we'll go on, okay? So who wants to volunteer? Okay.
I will, but can you start me off?
Yeah, the first page,
Mike?
where it says two, the big two. Now after Jesus was
there.
born,
And then I turn the page?
you turn the page and then end with like little crossings. Right there, the first verse,
Oh, right here. Oh,
okay?
First page.
okay.
Oh, I see it.
Gentiles worship the Christ child.
Okay.
Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him.
Okay, right there, perfect. So, by the way, understand that we are using the Orthodox Study Bible, which means that in the front is the text. Everything on the bottom is explanation of the text. And whenever you see a little cross on there, that means look down, because this verse is elaborated upon in the commentary underneath. This is the difference just a standard Bible and a study Bible. Study Bibles have commentary, and again, I tell you, the Orthodox Study Bible is very important for us because not only does it have a wonderful, sound theological and historical explanation of each verse when necessary, but it also connects it. It also has some commentary from the fathers of the church, and it also connects certain various passages to the life of the church and the sacraments of the church. So it's much more valuable for us. So now we understand, oh, this feast comes from this passage in the Bible. Oh, this is why we have this tradition. So if you really study the Orthodox Study Bible, you'll learn Orthodoxy. You really will.
Are we
Okay.
selling those here?
What's
Yes.
that?
Are we selling
Yes.
that? Okay.
In the bookstore. Okay, so first let's look at the bottom commentary on the first page here. 2:1. You see where I have it scribbled on the bottom? I have it underlined? Right. So Matthew anticipates Jesus' mission to the Gentiles. Okay? So in other words, we're going to talk about this a little bit. But really, you never have before Jesus a God that's outside of his people. Remember, each group of people had their own God. And remember, when they fought against each other, it was their God defeating the other people's God. Now, Matthew is saying, hey, this is not just the God of the Jews. I know I'm talking to Jews, but understand, this is not just our God. This is the God. So he's going to minister to Gentiles, the ones you make fun of, the ones who God told you not to be with in the Old Testament. They're going to convert, and he's going to be their God as well. Okay? So, Matthew anticipates Jesus' mission to the Gentiles. The wise men, or magi, who come from the east, that is, outside of Israel, perhaps from Persia, are the scholars of their time. In the Old Testament, Balaam was one of their predecessors, a Gentile who also anticipated the Messiah. The worship of the Lord by the Magi is symbolic of the church, the true Israel, in which membership is determined by faith, not by ethnic lineage. Okay, you are the God of Israel, they would say, right? The God of Israel. No, there's no longer the God of Israel. There's the God. Remember, when Moses came up to the burning bush and he said, who shall I say sent me, Lord? And he said, tell them, I am sent you. The one who is.
So why did God change his mind? In the Old Testament, it was just for the Jews.
It wasn't that God changed his mind. It was the ancient Israelites' understanding of God.
Okay.
All right? Which was elementary, immature. Remember, Jesus comes and he says, we'll read in a few Bible studies from here on the Sermon on the Mount. You have been told by Moses, love your neighbor, but hate your enemy. I tell you, love your enemy. Right? Now we're not getting baby food. Now we're getting the adult food. All right? Again, we can't compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges when it comes to the New Testament and the Old Testament, when it comes to the God of Israel and the God and Jesus Christ. It's the same foundation of our faith, but it's quite different in terms of their understanding. Look at how Jesus speaks in the New Testament, and look how God is presented as speaking in the Old Testament by the ancient
It was very
Israelites.
scary in the Old
Right,
Testament.
exactly.
And now with Jesus, all of a sudden, God is love. And now you're like, oh,
Right.
I remember that very clearly when our priest, Father Tsandico, first came out and said, God is love. We were all like, really?
Right, because as children, myself too, we're taught of the God of fire and brimstone, right?
Yeah.
Don't do that, God will punish you.
Yeah,
sure.
Right.
They used to always say that.
And that's really wrong,
yeah.
okay? Yeah, exactly. God is a God of love. But parents would simply just use that to be able to temper their kids or to raise their kids, to put the fear of God in them. But the Greek word phobo has a meaning of more like be in awe of the awesome presence than to be scared out of your mind and paralyzed by fear. God is not that God, because if he was, how would he have come into this world? As an innocent baby? I say come as a 200-foot giant and say, I am God. Can't do anything. He's not here to scare us. Right? We should fear ourselves and the devil. That's who, not God. Okay? So, yeah, the God of the New Testament is quite different than the God of the Old Testament. Or maybe it's the same God, but it's a different understanding of him. Right? Okay. Jesus is the fullness. Everything else before was not the fullness. So, here we are. They're bringing them, the Magi are bringing these gifts to God. Now, in Christmas, what do we give to God?
Nothing.
It's a lesson for our kids, for this generation.
For
All right.
ourselves.
For ourselves, too, absolutely.
We do it. The kids just follow. We're to blame.
Yeah, we overdo it, too, with them. They expect more. All right, so now let's go to verse 3, all the way from verse 3 to verse 8. Okay, stay in that same page. So who wants to read that?
Can I keep reading?
Yes.
When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all
By the way, this
After the
is
news.
italicized. You know why?
Yes, when he heard of the news of the.
No, it's not meant to emphasize something.
Oh, what is
It's
it?
not. All these, if it's italicized, like this comment, like the verse, that's
Yeah.
different. But when there's a word that's italicized like that, it's because that word "this" is not actually in the original Greek text. That word "this" has been added to make the text flow better by the scholars who put together the New King James Version of the Bible.
So it's not a reference?
It's not meant to be.
I'm sorry, Father, I read to 5-year-olds all day, so sometimes I
Right.
these or I use inflection.
okay, you-
Right, and there's no
Good
reason.
job.
But I want to let you know in this
But I thought I was being
context.
smart.
But it's important for you to know. Remember, we had said every time there's a Bible that's produced, there's a purpose for it. Scholars get together and they have to decide, how do we want to translate this Bible? Do we want to make it absolutely literally correct without worrying about whether it flows or not? Do we want to make it correct without damaging the message and yet let it flow like this, New King James and the NRSV do? Do we want to make it using more contemporary terms, like maybe the New Jerusalem Bible? Or do we want to really make it simple, like the Good News Bible? All of those things. Then they have to decide which texts, original texts, that we're going to use as the original manuscript, and so forth and so on.
A lot of editing.
A lot of editing. Even, I remember we said Matthew is editing. Matthew's got Mark, he's got the collection of sayings of Jesus, which we call Q, and he's got his own memory and whatever he wrote down himself as he reflected on being present at many of these things that were taking place in Jesus' life. He wasn't present at these things. Was he present when Jesus was born?
No.
Okay, so where do you think he's getting this stuff from?
The previous generation.
He's getting it from
Other notes.
a number of sources. You had, I remember, let's see that, Luke interviewed the Virgin Mary and asked him a whole bunch of things. This is why we have the Annunciation. Literally, Luke interviewed the Virgin Mary, spoke with her, and wrote, that's how he got some of these things. Then
Why
you have
isn't she
other
brought
books.
up in the Bible? I'm just curious.
She is.
Why didn't she write after?
Well, what was the role of women in writing at that time? And she has like a higher calling than that. You know, her role after Christ's resurrection in the early church was a quiet presence that strengthened the disciples, especially during the times of persecution. Right? Remember, all but one were killed, were martyred. Right? All but one, other than St. John the Evangelist, all were martyred. Okay, so it wasn't easy being an evangelist or an apostle in the early church. So she was a quiet presence. That wasn't her role. Her role was different.
Okay.
right? And maybe she didn't have the education level to be able to do this. Not that God could write, but she had wisdom beyond what we can say, I'm sure. If the apostles themselves who wrote this were going to her for guidance, what does it say about, and some of the simplest monks are some of the most wisest, right? Just because they don't have an expansive lexicon doesn't mean that they're not smart or wise. All right, so where were we now?
This.
Okay, right, this. So when Herod the king heard this, go ahead, he was troubled.
No, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among rulers of Judah. For out of you shall come a ruler, who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go. I'm sorry, I'm not mocking him. Trying to bring a voice to it. Go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back to worship me, that I may come and worship him also.
Again, him.
Not referring to Jesus?
No, it says when you find. The Greek says otaton vris. It doesn't say otaton vris. I'm saying this in modern Greek. In ancient Greek it was different. But he didn't say him. Whenever you find.
Okay.
So he meant him. But the literal translation is not him. He meant him. If you go like to ancient Greek, a lot of that's missing too. And if anybody ever read like Homer, the Iliad or the Odyssey, the ancient Greek from 700 BC is missing a lot of the things. Like, what was the other one? The Peloponnesian, the Spartan mothers. Okay, so they would say, Itan y epitas. Right. Itas y epitas. Yeah. Itan y epitas. Either with your shield or come on your shield. In other words, so what they were saying, the Spartan men, they had these shields were 50, 60 pounds. So if they retreated to save their lives, instead of fighting, they would have to ditch their shields, okay? If they came back without their shields, they were disgraced, because that meant they left and they abandoned their brothers in combat. If you died in combat, they would bring you back, your dead body lying on the shield, and they would carry you back.
In glory.
So the mothers, the tough Spartan mothers would say, you either come with your shield or you come on your shield.
So a victor or...
Don't show up alive without your shield.
Oh, my goodness.
But this is
No, that's how
insightful.
they were all raised.
But the reason I'm telling you this story is not to talk about ancient Greek
No.
history, but to talk about ancient Greek language that, itan epitan means all of this in those few words. Similarly, first century Greek and the Greek of the New Testament doesn't necessarily elaborate and uses all the prepositions and pronouns to say specifically all these things. But the writers of this said, let's put that in there. But let's make it italicized so that you know that that's not part of the original text, but it's there to make it flow better. Everybody following me so far?
Yes, that's good to know.
I mean, we're learning things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Herod knew of Jesus' coming in his time, in his generation, and he
No.
was afraid of his...
No, the wise men told him.
The wise men told Herod?
No, you'll
That was
see.
not wise.
That's why.
Should we read it?
See, look, you'll see. God did it on purpose. There was a star that they were following. Guess what happened to the star? It went away.
Oh,
And so they went to the ruler of that area to ask him, hey, you're in charge of all this Jewish area? Do you know about this young king of the Jews that's supposed to come? guess what Herod's nickname was? The King of the Jews.
Yeah.
Because his geographical area under the Roman government was in Jerusalem, in this area. And so, if anybody talked about the King of the Jews, it was him. So now what have you done?
An usurper. You've warned him of an
You've
usurper.
ignited his anger.
Man, jealousy, anger.
But why would God do that?
Right.
All right, let's go on. So we finished that verse. So let's go. Let's look at the commentary on the bottom of that page, 2:2. The star signifies the extraordinary importance of the birth of the Christ child. In ancient times, a star signified a god, a deified king. Okay? So, and then look down again. Knowing little of the Jewish Messiah, again, he doesn't know. Okay? So he went and said, hey guys, all of you chief priests and scribes, come together. Where in the Old Testament does it talk about this baby, this Christ child that's supposed to be born? Or this Messiah, I should say. He doesn't know Christ child. So he called them all up, and then they said, in Bethlehem, they gave, so this, knowing little of the Jewish Messiah and fearful of losing his throne to a newborn king, Herod asked the chief priests and scribes where the Christ was to be born. The chief priests of the temple in Jerusalem are the political and religious leaders of the Jews. Okay, think about the patriarch of Constantinople during the Turkish occupation. He was an ethnarch. He was not just the religious leader of the Greeks or the Byzantines or the Romans, really, that's what they were still called. Ethnarchis. He was also the political ruler of them. And through the structure of the church, they collected taxes on the heads of all the Christians, all those who were not Muslim. Right? Well, that was one of the persecutions the Greeks under the Turkish occupation between 1453 and 1821, that there was a head tax on them. So you had to pay more money to be Christian. Also, right, you couldn't ride a horse, which was the equivalent today of not being able to own a car. Think about it. And you were limited in so many other ways, in terms of advancement in government and other ways.
What generation was that?
This is 1453 to 1821, after the fall of Constantinople and before the Free State of Greece as a country, when the Greek people and the church was under the Ottoman rule, or the Ottoman yoke, as they call it. What is yoke in Greek again? Yoke is it's a weight, yoke. There's a Greek word for yoke.
Alicina?
No,
No, that's chains. There's a word, I can't remember it now. The Turkish yoke.
Yoke θα πει δεν έχει, δεν υπάρχει.
No.
You know what they put on the animals?
Βαρύδιος, a
Όχι,
weight.
όχι, όχι.
Χαλινάρι, το χαλινάρι.
Halinari is a
But there's another
saddle.
word
But
for
that's
it.
not
There
it.
is, there is.
Yeah. Okay, telespano, see? I'm learning from the Greeks, and the Greeks are learning from me. All right, so,
Ζυγό.
Zigo.
Το ζυγό.
Yeah, once I heard it,
Το ζυγό.
yeah, you've heard it, it's a popular expression.
Yeah.
Το zigo. Okay, so the chief priests, right, and for more recent time, guess one of the latest ethnarchs that we had? Do anybody remember?
The latest?
One of the, up till 1973. Not in the United States.
Queen Elizabeth?
No.
No. Think Greek area.
Oh, King
Cyprus.
Cyprus.
Makarios.
Ο καημένος.
Η Κύπρος.
Makarios was an ethnarch, right?
Yes.
He was the religious and the political ruler. Okay. So they include the high priest, who alone can enter the holiest of all. They have no idea that the Messiah has been born. The scribes, high cabinet officers, know the Messiah is to be born and where, but they have no revelation that he has come. God reveals his truth to those with a noble and good heart. not necessarily those who are the wisest and the most learned. Remember, that's why Jesus' disciples were made up of who? Simple, uneducated fishermen. And remember, who was the most educated? Judas. The most educated of the disciples was Judas, who spoke Greek fluently. Yeah. Be careful. All right.
Was Luke a doctor?
Yes. He was a physician, and that's why his gospel is so pastoral.
Luke also was a painter.
Well, he has been given the credit, according to Orthodox tradition, to have painted the first icon of the Virgin Mary. I don't know if he was a painter, but he definitely, the tradition tells us he was the first to paint an icon. Okay, so here we go. Herod gets this news, and Herod gets this news from these people, and he's like, what? King of the Jews? Some little punk kid's gonna come take my place? Are you kidding me? So then he tells them, tell me where he is so that I may worship him also. Which was not his purpose, as we know very well. Now, if you look at some of the commentary, now look at page 24. Remember what we have. We have the text of the Orthodox Study Bible and the commentary that's there. We also have, I made copies of the second chapter of Matthew, of the commentary of the Blessed Theophylact, who is an Orthodox commentary made up of many of the fathers of the church, a nice summarized one. And then for those who are more scholarly, then you have the Gospel of Matthew by Daniel Harrington, his commentary, which is more, using the newer methods of understanding Scripture, the more Protestant methods of learning. So I have commentary from those three sources in your packet. So if you look at page 24, thank you. It says, and thou, O Bethlehem, remember, he's going to come out of Bethlehem, the Messiah, art not the least among the princes of Judah. Since Bethlehem was small, it was despised, but now it is greatly renowned for Christ, who came forth from it. For all people from all the ends of the earth come to venerate this holy Bethlehem, right? Think about it. When you go to the Holy Lands, you want to go? By the way, yes? Next summer.
Oh,
Did Bethlehem do it?
Next
let's
summer,
make it true.
I'm going to start making arrangements. And we'll go
How's safety gonna
to
be?
the Holy Lands.
You gotta have
Some of
faith.
the people went with St. Demetrius.
Yeah, they're coming back, I think,
I know, see that down there.
Tonight? That was short.
10 days there.
September.
Wow.
Διδάσκονται, πολύ που διδάσκονται. Και έχουν άλλες δουλειές.
I'm getting impossible. It's very hard.
Well, it's hot, we'll manage it. We'll suffer a little bit for Christ.
That's
We'll
it.
suffer enough for us.
Do you mean 2016?
Yes,
Oh, not this summer?
not this summer.
Oh.
Okay. So, now look again, page 26. Next page over. This is commentary when Herod says, when you find him, tell him to, I want to come and talk to him. And then here it says, 8-9, verses 8-9. The star was hidden for a time by God's providence so that they would inquire of the Jews, and Herod would be troubled, and thus the truth would be made all the more apparent. So now, now that you're, remember, why is Pontius Pilate in the creed? Why is his name in the creed?
He was the
To ground Jesus within the historical context of the world. Okay? And so that we know that he's not a construct. He wasn't made up. Here, once again, this way they'll say, well, historically there's no connection, but now you have a group of people who went to the ruler to say, hey, tell us about this person. And what do you do when you do that? You get a response that's negative. And for some reason, the collateral damage was worth the grounding of Jesus in historical context. But Father, 2,000 souls. It doesn't make sense. We'll read later on, there's a passage here that has one of the commentaries that says it beautifully. So let's continue. We were up to verse 8. So who would like to read from verse 9 all the way to 10? Just 9 and 10. Maria, if you want to continue, go ahead.
When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy.
Okay, so if you look at the commentary on the bottom, 2:11, Matthew, writing for Jewish Christians, cites Gentiles as the first worshipers of Jesus. Luke, writing for Gentile Christians, cites the first worshipers, the Jewish poor, shepherds from surrounding fields. Right? I'm on the bottom of the inside cover. Look at the second page, open your book, the back of the first page. I'm reading the commentary on the bottom here. Okay, I'm sorry, because as I prepared all of this, it's all in my mind as how I want to present it, but I have to be more. Okay, and here on, the Magi, first fruits of the Gentiles, come to Christ bearing gifts, gold for a king, frankincense for God, and myrrh for a man who was to suffer and die. The wise men have received some knowledge about the newborn king through their observance of the star, but when they see him, they recognize him as the Son of Righteousness, the Orient, from on high, the bright and morning star. So, like, sometimes, God bless you, sometimes you think, like, from the mouths of babes comes this wisdom, how they know this, and yet the ancient Israelites don't. You know, they're so focused on trying to get freed from their political rule. And for some of the Jewish leaders, the religious leaders, they're more focused on personal gain. They forget about what's best for their own people, that they lose sight of the big picture. And it's easy for priests, Orthodox priests, to do the same, right? And then if they're lucky, they'll get a hastuki in their ministry to wake them up, and to remind themselves why they were called from the beginning, right? Some priests never lose their way. Some do and never find their way again. Right? What have I done? I've got a couple of costumes.
I didn't say a word.
They haven't been big slaps, but little slaps. Thank God for the hastukia. I'm serious. All right. So here now, they bring these gifts. Why? Later on, you're going to find out that in the commentary from the Blessed Theophilite, perhaps the gold was the money that they needed to get to Egypt and to survive there until they came back. Incredible how God provides. Just like the ancient Israelites were in the desert, and what happened every morning?
Manna.
Manna fell from heaven. They had always enough to eat for that day. Okay. So let's go on, verses 12 to 14. Actually, to 15.
We didn't read 11.
Oh, we didn't read 11?
No.
She stopped at 10.
Okay, go ahead.
Actually,
Thank you. 11, 12. Oh, okay.
No.
11,
Yeah.
12, 13, 14.
Mm.
And 15. Thank you. Go ahead. Who wants to read? Maria?
Okay. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented to him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. I think I've been cut off.
No, you're right here, you're right here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I called my son.
Okay. So, maybe we should talk about dreams for a second.
Divine intervention.
there are dreams that are inspired by God, and sometimes they're not really dreams, but they're a vision of God that feel like a dream. And then there's the disturbing dreams that we have all the time, right? In my dream, I struggle, I can't consciously control the events or the depictions or the scenes that are taking place, or even my own actions within dreams. And sometimes I wake up and I'm very troubled as to what I saw or what I did or what happened to me, right? And I just get on my knees and I say, Lord, thank God it was a dream. And that's it. I say a prayer and I go back to sleep. I try not to remember it. And now I was just reminded that my friend's wife died in a dream last night. And I was going to call them. I remembered it. I remember waking up in the middle of the night that she died, Karen. All right. And so I need to, after the meetings, after our Bible study, I got a call. I'm sure she's fine. Right?
You said she did die and you
One
saw
of
it in
his
your dream.
friends' wife.
In my dream.
Confusing, okay.
Yeah, I was gonna
Disturbing.
call. Yeah, disturbing. So why did these things happen? And what's that?
Forewarning,
For a sign.
forewarning.
Right. Listen, I am not at a level. I have not come to a determination from my own experiences and from those that people have either confessed or shared with me that dreams are prophetic in nature, or they're. Although I've actually, I feel that there's more prophecy in my, my conscious state, in terms of when I'm open to God, that I can, at times, see things that I don't see or feel things that shouldn't be felt, much more than I can when I'm dreaming, right? So, and it might be just me personally, but I do believe that at some level, that dreams are not, that the devil is very much involved in that aspect of that realm, of that dream state, and that God sometimes intervenes and says, no, you will remember this dream, and this is what I want to communicate to you, and you will document that. But I still, there's no science to dreams. I don't have the ability to see 7 skinny cows eating 7 fat cows and say, this is what's going to happen, right? Or to say that water means this and fire means this, and like many people who want to interpret dreams, right? I would be very careful and cautious about dreams and interpreting them, all right? I would say that much. But here, whether it was a dream or at a conscious state, God does definitely communicate. It happened many times in Scripture where God communicates to somebody in a dream. And, I haven't necessarily shared this with you, but I've had saints appear, but not in dreams, while I was conscious and talk to me. But not, but it was, how do I explain this? It was other than, it was...
A different realm?
No, but it was, I wasn't in another state, but there was the presence of another state that was overwhelming everything else that was there. Does that make sense?
Yes, you're there physically, but spiritually you've removed yourself and you're in another realm and you can see things.
No, well,
No?
I would say that because of the spiritual entity that's present there, what you consider to be the normal interaction is at another level. How's that?
Yeah,
All right.
I've experienced that.
And a few of you have. I know a few of you have because you've shared them with me in confession or privately. And so that when you're like, do you think I'm crazy? And I'm sitting there listening to people saying, no, I've experienced it too. So it's not crazy. But anyway, so God communicates. Well, however you want to understand it, God communicates to us, whether it's from himself or from saints or from angels, for some purpose for us or for others. Sometimes it's for others, and that has nothing to do with us. We're evangelists, we're messengers. We share whatever good news God has for us. All right, so God definitely appears to Joseph in a dream, says, take Mary. Then he appears again, don't go back. Okay? Don't go back. Why don't go back? Now look at page 28 in your thing. I love this. I love this passage because it talks, not why we're not going to talk about why he doesn't go back, but why does it say about betrothed? Okay? When he arose, he took the young child and his mother. Why did it say he took his wife? Why did it say Joseph took his wife? But Joseph took the young child and the child's mother. So read this here. 13. Do you see now the reason why God permitted the virgin to be betrothed? It is revealed to you here that Joseph might care for her and watch over her. The angel did not say, take thy wife, but take the mother of the child. For once his suspicion had been allayed, and the righteous man had understood from the miracles attendant to his birth that everything was of the Holy Spirit, the angel no longer calls her Joseph's wife, but the betrothed. Right? It doesn't say here, it doesn't say betrothed, but it says take the mother of this child. Because because how can Joseph be the father? He's not.
But he wasn't.
Right.
And she would never be his wife.
And she never consecrated that marriage. So it's always considered a betrothal. And
So
that's
he
why
was her
she's ever virgin.
caregiver, her keeper,
Right. He was
her guardian,
Her guardian.
her physical, her human guardian.
he was her sugar daddy. He was the man that God called to protect her and to provide for her in the Christ child. And we say, give us this day our daily bread. You have no idea what that one line says.
Yes, very deep.
It says, give us everything we need, Lord.
Nourish us, provide for us.
Everything. From the food in our stomach, to the roof under our head, to the protection that we need, to the nurturing that we need.
To his body and blood.
Okay, so let me go back to. So then, all right, and let's go now to the next section, the Holy Innocents. This is very good. Oh, one more, actually, on the commentary here, Egypt is where Israel once took refuge. Okay, so we're going to go back to the second page, to the text, all right, to the inside second page, to the third page. Oh,
Single.
inside second page, yeah.
Matthew 2:23.
And the name of
Right,
the-
where it says page 7 on the very
Those
top.
are guys, but are good guys.
Yeah.
Before we read the next passage, if we look at the commentary underneath, which is 2:14, where I have underlined, Egypt is where Israel once took refuge and was made captive. As the Israelites fled from Egypt, so Joseph flees into Egypt by night. How God turns everything around is incredible, right? It is possible the gifts of the Magi paid for this journey. All right? This is what I was talking about. Some of the first steps of Jesus are taken in exile. This is one of a number of instances in Scripture where God's people must elude civil power in order to do His will. And we say, oh, Father, why are things so difficult? How can we get... There's a reason why things are difficult. Right? The church grew in the early few centuries. Why?
Persecution.
Persecution. To be Christian, it was at a price. And then I just talked about the Turkocratia, right, under the Turkish occupation. For you to be a Christian, it came at a price.
Even now, some countries.
Even now, if you really want to be a true Christian, you're going to pay your full taxes. You're going to claim everything, and you're going to not take corners with that you know you shouldn't take. Even if at times the law says it's okay.
We have people dying. Never mind paying taxes. They give their life. They get slaughtered for being Christian.
Look above right
Yeah.
now. This in this one last year.
What's happened?
Unbelievable.
Back again.
I think so, Korea, you're not allowed,
Right, in North Korea.
North Korea, yes.
Although there is an Orthodox church in North Korea.
Yeah, heard.
The bishop of, or the metropolitan of Korea actually has, I think, 6 parishes in South Korea and 1 in North Korea. Unbelievable.
Excuse me.
All right, so now we're gonna go to verses 16 to 18. Okay, in the text. Anybody else wanna read?
I'll read.
Okay, go ahead.
Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry, and he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they are no more.
Okay. So, let's look at page 29 in the commentary. And both the commentary here, there's a connection, there's like a lot of connections with Jesus' birth and Moses' birth, right? They're both persecuted, there's a response to this. They're raised outside of their place where they were born. All right, so on page 29, after the bold stuff, on number 16, as God used Moses to trick Pharaoh, so too he used the Magi to trick Herod. For both Herod and Pharaoh were child slayers. Pharaoh slew the male children of the Hebrews in Egypt, and Herod slew the male children of the Hebrews in Bethlehem. Herod vents his wrath against the Magi upon those who had wronged him in nothing. Why were the children allowed to be slaughtered? So that Herod's wickedness might be revealed. But perhaps you will ask me, why did the children suffer wrong to show Herod's wickedness? Listen then, they were not wronged, but were made worthy of crowns. For anyone who suffers some evil here suffers either so that his sins might be absolved, or so that his crowns may be multiplied. So it is with these children. For their suffering, they will receive a greater crown in heaven. Okay. What is the greatest good in this world?
Say again?
Your
What is
soul.
the greatest good?
No?
Life,
Oh.
health, and life is what we will say. But as Christians, we have to say it's salvation. That is the ultimate goal. Good and the ultimate goal. It's salvation.
Yeah.
However it takes to get there. Whether it is St. Mary of Egypt spending 47 years in the desert out of repentance or out of her inability or trusting herself to be able to stay in that state of repentance in the cities. Whether it is going into the monastery and sacrificing everything because maybe you feel that you're called or that you would be too easily corrupted by the cares of this world. Whether it is sacrificing your life knowing that this might be the only opportunity that you have to enter the kingdom of heaven, or whether it's just completely turning yourself around, repenting, and living a life to Christ. Whatever needs to be done for us to get to the kingdom of heaven is all that's important. And you can't just focus on yourself, because the ironic thing is you get to heaven by being selfless, by caring for others, and by not even caring for your own body. I don't know if I ever told you, I had a classmate who went to Mount Athos. Then he came back and he said, I'm going to Mount Athos. I'm going to become a monk.
Oh, man.
And he wasn't someone I thought would do that. And it was so funny because I remember him, I was like the resident director, and he's like, how do the students come to shower without a shower cloth? You know, you need a shower cloth to really become clean. You can't really get yourself clean with just soap and water. It's really a time. He was so focused on his personal cleanliness. And I remember when I got there, I saw him like 2 years later in our senior trip. And he looked pretty beat up, like he hadn't shaved and showered. And I go, can I ask you something? I said, for some reason, something stands out to me that you said. And I said about the washcloth. And he goes, how funny. He goes, I'm only allowed to take a shower once a month.
Oh, my. So he's not focused on that anymore.
Yeah.
Because he was so focused on the outward.
The outer.
So his abbot noticed this, and he said, you know what?
That's your
Yeah.
fármaco.
How strange that is. Whatever it takes. If your right hand causes you to sin,
Cut it off.
Cut it off.
cut it off.
But Father, we're speaking now in a
Now we're talking about innocence.
Right.
If it takes for you to be born with a special needs child,
That's your cross.
that's your cross, and that's your
Salvation.
salvation.
But they could also be your blessing.
That's your salvation. That's what I'm saying. That when I say blessing, I mean salvation.
Yeah.
How many times do we say to our own children, and I think most of us in this room are parents, that I would rather get sick to take it off my child. I would donate my life and my soul for my child, but not my child. How would Abraham do that? How would...
How about God, the Father?
God did it.
But I'm not God.
Father,
That was asked. If that was asked of me, I couldn't do it. That's my imperfection.
That is
That's my
something that
vanity.
I've said hundreds of times. I never understood the sacrifice that God made in His Son until I became a daddy.
But that's why he's God. Και πεθαράμουλε, and a lot of people will understand the old adage of, κόψε ένα δάχτυλο, who do I love more, or who would I suffer more? Κόψε ένα δάχτυλο.
They're all the same.
They're all the same.
My father used to tell that.
But
that's not even it. That's talking about whether you love one child over the other. But the fact is that you're asking yourself to suffer. Now, remember,
so why this
understand,
choice?
the greatest good is salvation. These saints, these young children are not just saved, but they're actually counted as saints. And they're celebrated the Sunday after Christmas.
Well, Father, that what we say with the kids, I'm thinking the last days, sometimes I'm thinking if I'm part of it. And I'm thinking the last days, the Christians, they're gonna die, they're gonna suffer.
Right.
Food, cold, and everything. And I want my kids to go through that.
You don't want your kids to go through that.
No, I want, if I know they're gonna be saved.
In the end, you want them to go through it.
Yes, because I know they're gonna be saved. Because after we're just here for a little bit, we're not here forever. But it is hard too. At the same time.
It's gonna be terrifying.
It's gonna be not for us so much for the kids. You see your kids. I think so. I can take the hunger. I don't know if I can see how it is to see your own kids. Yeah.
Think about the saints. Agape, love. What is it? Sophia.
Yes, Sophia, faithful.
Sophia. How she, wanted them to endure.
Saint Sophia had 3 children: faith, hope, and love.
Yeah.
And they were martyred. So
in front of her eyes,
right.
And she was pleading that they go through with it, and then the next day God took her too. Yes. So right in front of her. How did she endure? She was a mother.
Because she would believe
but
in
her
God.
faith was so grand that she knew they were going to get the crowns if they just, to the end.
To the end, yeah.
Do we have that kind of faith?
No.
Hardly.
You know what? We probably don't, and yet the person you think definitely doesn't might step up and be the first person to say, I give my life.
Right.
You don't know until you're in that position. Right? No one ever knows.
I just want to
I've
bring
had
this full
dreams like
circle.
that, which are wonderful too. I had the dreams where I said, I'm going to do this, and then I sacrificed myself. See, in the last 6 months, with all these beheadings of all the Christians, as I'm thinking about these things and praying about them before I go to sleep, it's in the back of my mind that I see myself in that position. Doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. But I also see myself being able to move without stepping and going around in my dreams. And, oh, this is what it's like. Oh, I can do this. I have this gift. People don't know that I can do this.
In your dream.
This in my dream. You know, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so awesome. You know, and then I wake up, I'm like, oh.
It's only a dream. At least not yet.
None of us know how we would react in that kind of situation. You never know until you get there. That's why it's never good to say, why did she do that, or why did he do that? Because you don't know.
Oh yeah, you can fall right into the
If you were in
same,
those shoes, what you would
the
do.
same sin. You can fall right into that.
So we're certainly not questioning God's purpose or plan, we're questioning the formula of the event. Again, if we're giving reason for epitides, this is why, this is how, and we're giving meaning.
Are we giving these?
Are we giving meaning to this though?
Look, we would hope that what we're reading here most of it comes from the fathers of the church in terms of the commentary here. So we're hoping that they were inspired by God as they made these commentaries. But again, we are so limited in terms of our ability to understand who God is, right? He's the creator, we're the creation. What do we use, 10% of our brains?
I don't even think that much.
Yeah, right.
I doubt that. For me.
So how can we understand the grand scheme of things? This is where you begin to understand, and I speak. When you're engulfed by God's love, and you feel that presence in various moments through your lives. And I'm talking about where you are completely immersed in it, and you're just crying, and there are chills coming down your spine, and you're tingling, and this is one of those states that you're here, but you feel somewhere else. It is during those moments only that you can begin to understand that everything outside of this world and above this world is so much greater than we've ever experienced in this world.
So awesome.
And if you've never experienced that to that degree, ask God to give you that blessing. And you can if you begin slowly by the prayer, the daily, morning, evening, and even during the day prayer cycle, by the sacraments, and by opening your heart and saying, Lord, I want to experience your love. You can't do that and then not take care of the homeless person outside. So when you ask for that, be careful. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you time, money, and everything, and maybe some security. But if you want that journey, it's there for you, for anyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Not
Absolutely.
And I'm speaking because I've had glimpses of this, or maybe a little bit more sometimes, but they're fleeting. And then I fall into my own self-centeredness again, and I worry about other things, and I lose it. It's so, I grasp at it, it's gone. Come back!
Well, physical, it's a moment.
But the reassuring thing is that I know it's there, and that I'm so looking forward to that moment. Maybe after my kids are married, I see a grandchild. I don't know, whatever God wills in me. All right, so there is no real answer to this in terms of how God allows this to happen. But again, this is the consequence of grounding the birth in history. That you're going to upset some people, and there's going to be a response, a negative response to it. And that's also the cost of discipleship. Even though these were innocents, that's why they're called the holy innocents. Right. All right, so let's go on to, we should talk a little bit about RAMAH, this Old Testament verse, or this quote that is here from kind of Jeremiah. You know, I don't have my Old Testament. Who's got an Old Testament with us?
Do you have Old Testament in that one? Or is that you?
Look up Jeremiah. Do you know what Jeremiah is?
I used to be able to do this in high school.
Do you want to do it?
So basically, it's right here anyway, because the commentary, look, on the bottom of page 7 here.
Oh, page 7?
No, okay, so no, forget about that for a second. Go to the actual text, And Matthew, when it says Matthew 23, so the inside cover of your thing, the inside cover? Page 7 on top?
Page 7 on top, right here.
Yeah, page 7 on top.
Yeah,
Inside
yeah,
cover,
we got
inside
it.
cover. Thank you, Bob.
Right here.
Look, we're gonna refer to
All right.
29 again. So keep that.
The commentary, the cruelty of Herod, verses 17 and 18. 2:17, 18. Jeremiah recorded the people of Jerusalem being led away to exile. This is 31:15. On their sad pilgrimage to an alien land, they passed Ramah, where Rachel, the wife of Jacob, lay buried. In his prophecy, Jeremiah pictures Rachel, who had long been dead, weeping even in her womb,
In her
for the-
tomb.
in her tomb, for the fate that had been befallen the people, her children. Now the mothers of Bethlehem weep for the slaughter of their children, the holy innocents, who are regarded as saints and martyrs in the Orthodox Church. As Rachel was told her children would return from exile in Babylon, so Jesus will return from his exile in Egypt. Okay? So that's a good. So it doesn't talk necessarily about innocent people being killed, but it talks about this one passage. And that's perhaps why Matthew uses this. Again, Matthew's being an editor here. Why does he want to add that? Because you have the story. We know that 2,000 innocent kids were killed. Why does Matthew decide to go to
Old Testament.
Jeremiah? Well, he's going to the Old Testament because he's talking to Jewish
Tiny
Christians,
chapters.
right? Because they want to see where it's connected to the Old Testament. But why this verse? So again, this is him as an editor. It's important for us to understand this. The evangelist as the editor. Okay. Now let's go verse 19 all the way to the end. So who's going to read that? Now when Herod was dead.
Betty.
Okay. Now when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who sought the young child's life are dead. Then he arose, took the child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. Should I keep going?
Yes.
But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea instead of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned by God in a dream, he turned aside into the region of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, he shall be called a Nazarene.
So one of the interesting things here is that we still can't find out which prophet talked about that he should be called a Nazarene, the
It's
Messiah.
very specific.
What's that?
It's very specific.
Yeah, because here, I mean, there's some speculation, but there really isn't any concrete evidence. So, if you want to look a little bit about the history, if you go to page 30 in the back of in the packet. Okay. So Herod left 3 sons, Philip, Antipas, and Archelaus. He had directed Archelaus to be king, and the other 2 tetrarchs. Joseph was afraid to go into the land of Israel, that is Judea, because Archelaus was similar to Herod, his father. Antipas was the young Herod who slew the forerunner. Okay, so here, just a little background. If you want to again understand a little bit more, look on the bottom of that page 7 again, the original text. All right. Verse 22. Archelaus was banished by Augustus Caesar to Gaul in AD 6, when the Jews protesting the cruelty of Archelaus' rule petitioned his removal. That very cruelty is foretold by the Lord as a warning to Joseph, hence the detour to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, governed by another son, Herod, called Herod Antipas. Then if you look at the next page, the page right afterwards, the comment on 223, the prophecy here cannot be conclusively identified. It has been taken variously as a reference to the branch, in the Hebrew, Nesser, of Isaiah, or to the Nazarite of Judges, or Matthew may be alluding to the passages which speak of the Messiah as despised, since Nazareth did not have a reputation among the Jews. Remember that they said, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" When it was Peter talking to
No, wasn't Nathaniel?
Nathaniel says, not Peter,
to Philip.
Philip and Nathaniel. Thank
Yeah.
you. There you go, Philip and Nathaniel. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? Nazareth later became a designation for followers of Jesus, especially in the Semitic world, although Christian was the more common name. And when were they called Christian for the first time? Where? In Antioch. Right, the book of Acts says. So they used to call it the Christians, the Nazarenes, in the beginning, because of Jesus of Nazareth.
And when did they add the BC after the years?
When did they add?
Like 4 BC or 1 BC or how did
Around 0 was Jesus' birth. So.
Right. So
No, I
basically-
understand, but I mean it's like here they are, they crucified him. Here they are, they wanted to banish him, and then they
Use
and
him
then
as a mark in time.
But they,
Yeah.
who's they?
I don't know. That's what I'm
Romans.
No,
saying.
understand. The people who put the BC stuff were the intellectual people in the first few centuries after Christ's birth, to distinguish the time before and after. Most of them were monks, priests, the most educated people in the world were that. So when they wanted to distinguish a period of time between what was the old time and the new time, it was people who were Christian to say before Christ, and then the Latin for after Christ, or after salvation, AD, right? So this is why you have that. It was Christians doing that, not these people who were persecuting.
Okay.
When we say BC or AD, those are historians writing that down. And again, most
But
historians.
it's stuck.
Yeah, but now they want to say BC. They want to say BCE.
What's that mean?
BCE is a reference that doesn't
For
take
the Christian era.
before Christian era. So not talking about before Christ as if, yes, or AD. Yeah, after Christian era, ACE.
Oh my.
So many historians,
Let that not
Who
be
wants to
done.
change it?
secular
Yeah.
people.
Atheist people.
No, second.
No, because, well, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a Jew. A Jew's a believer, right? I mean, they might want to say BC,
The Jews
but
were
remember,
saved.
Jesus
They're
Christ, well, they
still
only
waiting.
want to hear
They're
Christ, because Christ
still waiting for
represents
that.
the anointed one, the Messiah. But, yeah, so there are people who are moving in that direction. Trying to get- And that's been for a while, as the world gets more secular.
Plus, what?
What was it, what was the New York Times article that said, the headline says God is dead, like in the 50s?
What? It's Masonic?
They'll be saved.
Masonic?
It's not necessarily
It's not
Masonic,
nothing.
and
It's not
Masonic,
what
no.
it's based on.
I would say it's more secular. It's the attempt to remove anything that's godly within the history of our
Of our
civilization.
schools.
Yeah.
Take God out of the school completely.
Right, that's the goal. Right.
Yeah.
So,
They want to do the same thing in Greece too.
yeah, well,
Oh,
now
they
the
want to take
secular-
history out of history now. Now they want to just keep the good parts. Το ακούσαμε αυτό πριν φύγαμε. They want to take they would just want to leave the good history
Positive.
in the
Imagine that.
books.
How they gonna,
Other subject, other class.
And take the
That's
cross off the
crazy.
flag too.
What's that?
Take the cross off the flag.
I know.
Anyway.
Αφού άθεοι κυβερνάνε, τι περιμένεις?
Yeah.
There you go. Why? Tsipras is
Oh, yeah.
He's well known. He's an atheist.
Yeah.
That's right.
Huh?
All right, so that we focus back on Bible.
Come back, bring it back.
Any questions or comments about this? So here now, you're gonna see now, there's gonna be a tremendous distinction. So really, the first chapter talks about who Jesus was, right? It talks about the genealogy, it talks about where he was born. So it was about who. The second chapter is about the where. Right? And you're talking about all these areas. It goes from here to here to here to there to there. But now chapter 3, the next time we meet, now we're talking about the beginning of his ministry. So chapter 3 will begin with talking about St. John the Baptist, the forerunner, right? The person who prepared the way, the last prophet of the Old Testament.
And then they say the first saint of the New Testament, no?
Yeah.
Well,
Because he's right on the cusp.
yeah.
Yeah, he's the first one. He lost his life.
The first martyr of the New Testament,
Yeah.
St. Stephen.
Saint Stephen, they say, yeah.
But the truth is, he's the bridge. But then St. Paul was also the bridge. The bridge from the Old Testament to the New Testament, because without his deep understanding of the Old Testament and his revelation of Jesus Christ, we wouldn't have these epistles, we wouldn't have the Christian church as it is, and our teachings really are. So, important person in this. He's a bridge as well. All right.
I do have one more question.
Yes.
Since
What
we're
time
in,
is it, so that I know?
8:25.
Oh, good.
Wow.
8:23.
I don't have anywhere to go. Actually, I'm going to the gym. I don't know why I didn't say that, but I need to physically exert myself.
I am overwhelmed by the sign of the times, literal sign of the times. So are we trying to understand that there are 3 people that have seen prophecy come true, have seen the Old Testament happening now, taking a left to Nazareth, Jesus is born, the Christ child is born. Just the Magi know, just Mary and Joseph know. Herod thinks he knows.
Well, the shepherds are also revealed. I mean, we have that in Luke.
So it's a very small community, though, that is present for this Diastavrosi. This is a huge,
Right, intersection.
huge intersection, right? This is it, like it's happening now.
Right, so
And then,
it's because it's that.
Quiet for
But think
30
about
years.
this. How about the disciples who were with Jesus throughout all those years, well, 3 years, and they still don't understand who
still
he is?
dumbfounded by their
And you're worried
presence.
about only 3 people know? Again, that was the purpose, to come in all humility.
It just seems very quiet, though, still. This seems very quiet.
Exactly. Because God doesn't need to prove anything to anybody.
And he lives quietly for 30 years, saved, healthy.
And that's the lesson
thankfully.
that's the model he gives us.
No.
Is
yeah,
be
he wanted
impactful,
to
not by
bye-bye.
all
He
the
wanted.
hoopla.
Be
By
quiet.
the simplicity and humility, and through that, great things will be done in your life. For you, or maybe for others only. It's not all the grandiosity that we are so accustomed to. He came in all humility. And he didn't, with no fanfare, just a couple of prophecies from the Old Testament, and this humble entrance into the world. God came into the world in the humblest of babies, born in a manger, in a cave. Come on, you can't make this stuff up. You know, and that's my God, who says, I'll lower myself to whatever I have to. I'll wash my disciples' feet. I'll die for you. Because I'm not all about the love. I am love. And still, love does not contain all that I am. It limits me. I'm more than just love. Does that make sense? So yeah, there's no hoopla, there's no fanfare. But he does say, when I come back, it'll be different. I'm going to come back on the clouds. It'll be quite different. And wait till we finish this, and we'll do John, and then we'll do Revelation.
Okay.
And wait till you see that. Χριστός ανέστηκε νεκρών θανάτων θανατοπατήσας και της επιστήμας συμπερίληψης ανισάμενος. Αληθώς ανέστη ο Κύριος. God bless you. We'll see you next Wednesday or Sunday for church.
Wednesday, no Wednesday.
By the way,
What's Wednesday?
Oh,
next Wednesday.
oh, the March
It's
6.
Orthodoxy 101.
Yes, March 6.